Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War Update extra video where I'm going to talk to you about the Donbas region and how it's on the chopping block with regard to American and Russian conversations concerning the sort of peace negotiations, where it looks like the Americans want to give the Donbass to the Russians without a fight in exchange for a ceasefire. That they appear to be looking at the Ukrainians saying, why wouldn't you want to give up this area of land to stop all the killing that is taking place, all those young Ukrainian fighters? Surely that's a good swap, but it's not, and it's a red line, and I want to explain why it's a red line, and what the Americans don't seem to understand, although I'm sure their military men probably do. But someone like Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff, even Marco Rubio, that talks about how it's only, was it 20 by 50 kilometer stretch of land, or indicating that it's just a small area of land. Why wouldn't you want to give it up? I think those negotiators are saying, and it's not as easy as that, because it is a super important area of land, not just for industrial reasons, although much of that has been lost already, but actually it's to do with fortifications, and it's to do with giving that up to the Russians without a fight, where that would be hugely attritional for the Russians. And actually, that's where all the defensive fortifications have been built, and there are really none beyond that area. So giving that to the Russians would just be suicidal going forward. Anyway, we're at a time at the moment in the war where things are looking pretty challenging for the Ukrainians. We've had the former foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, come out today and say in 2026, Ukraine will lose even more people and territories, and the terms of peace on the table will be the same. We do not have enough forces to change the trajectory of the war. So you've got this admission from the former foreign minister, very highly regarded, saying that we don't have the troops to throw into, retaking any land militarily. So we need to achieve the best we can from peace negotiations, and the longer it goes on, the less land we are going to control, and the more land we're going to have to get back through negotiations. And so there's a bit of pressure on from Kuleba there to do negotiations now, to sign up to something now. And I think there is a sense, Zelensky has been scrabbling around trying to get another meeting with the Americans. So it looks like there might be another meeting, maybe in Miami, with certain people. Zelensky might even be going over to the United States, and I get the sense from that maybe the Ukrainian delegation, the Ukrainian government, really do actually want to do a deal, that they can't afford to allow the war to go on for too much longer. And of course, that means that Ukraine is arguably in a weak position militarily. Now things are looking good for Ukraine in terms of Russia's weak economy, and there are even more indicators coming out every single day. I've got more to talk about tomorrow with regard to how precarious the Russians are in that respect, but they still seem to be able to recruit foreigners. I think that's been a really big problem for Ukraine. Throw them onto the frontline areas and grind on and take this land from the Ukrainians. And Ukrainians, they're ramping up, they're scaling up production of missiles and drones, but they are losing land, and the attrition of their own people is obviously always going to be challenging. And then they changed the rules about young people being able to go abroad, and I still don't understand why there's supposedly this exodus of young men leaving, quitting their jobs and whatnot, and deciding to move abroad. Well, they're the people that you want to wait until they're 25 and mobilize them, or you change the mobilization laws now and mobilize them straight away. So anyway, all of that is going on. You got Dmytro Kuleba saying that we have Donald Trump in the White House today saying, did Witkoff and Kushner, well, this is a question, did Witkoff and Kushner give you the sense that President Putin still wants to end a war, still wants to make peace? Trump says he would like to end a war. That was their impression. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America instead of losing thousands of soldiers a week. So this concentration on business and economic deals and trade. Their impression was very strongly that he'd like to make a deal. We'll see what happens now. I don't think Putin does want to make a deal, to be honest. I think Trump's been completely hoodwinked. I think that's relatively easy. Witkoff and Kushner came away with the impression that Putin wants to end the war. Quote, he seems to want to return to normal life. Trump also added, I told in this office, you have no cards. Zelensky has no cards. That was the moment to settle. I thought it was the best chance to settle. They chose not to. So he's having to go at the Ukrainians for not having settled already. This just adds to the pressure for Ukraine to settle quickly. Now, will the Donbas be on the cards? This is red line for the Ukrainians, and rightly so. Today, Bloomberg published an article in which it was noted that Italy has slowed down NATO program, so they potentially suspended the Pearl initiative from an Italian point of view, which is providing money for Ukraine to buy American weapons. Quote, first of all, we hope that in the coming months, if an agreement is reached, weapons will no longer be needed. So they don't kind of want to spend money on weapons if they think there's going to be a ceasefire soon. If a ceasefire comes, weapons will already be needed for other purposes. I mean, guaranteeing Ukraine's security according to the NATO Article 5 model, with the presence of Americans who could also guarantee air defense, said the Italian foreign minister. This is another important aspect. We will do our part, as always, today, in the coming weeks and in the coming months. So interesting there. So on the one hand, we think there's going to be a ceasefire soon and we don't want to put money in. On the other hand, we think there should be an Article 5 type NATO guarantee for Ukraine. But then on the other side, you have Mark Rutte saying today we need $1 billion a month expenditure for Ukraine's weapons, and nations came together, 5 different nations came together, and I think pledged $1 billion. So all sorts going on, but is there real tangible evidence that the Ukrainians are going to be pressured to do a peace deal? NATO has said that Putin will not be able to seize the Donbas until the end of 2026. A high-ranking NATO official has told the BBC. NATO believes that despite the growing financial burden, Russia is capable of continuing hostilities in the current regime until 2027. So NATO thinks that Russia have got 1 year to go. At the same time, the Russian army is suffering heavy losses on the battlefield. About 1,100 soldiers are killed per day. And the total number of killed and wounded is currently approaching 1.15 million servicemen. So those are the claims there. Okay, I don't know that soldiers are killed, that many soldiers are killed a day, but certainly casualties. Now, let's look at the Donbass itself and claims surrounding it. So I want to show you two maps from Clément Mollin, the French mapper. Here's the area of the Donbass that's still not under control of the Russians. And of course, just straight away, without knowing anything about this area, Russia's struggled to take Donbass since 2014. It is incredibly painful for them to take small areas like Pokrovsk, right? Why would you then just force Ukraine to give this all up for a start? Just aside from anything else, that is just, it seems ridiculous to me and completely wrong-headed. Oh, you're a thief. You've burgled this house. You've stolen most things. Hang on, you need to stop doing that. But just to make sure you stop, do you want to go upstairs and steal all the rest of the stuff just up there in the main bedroom? Just have a look through the jewelry boxes, get the rest of the stuff, and then it's definitely, that's enough. I mean, it's a ridiculous way of doing negotiations, just appeasing the aggressor. But on top of the kind of abstract ideas, you've got the fact that this is a very important industrial area, so that's going to super hurt Ukraine even more and benefit Russia. This is a jewel that Russia wanted, particularly Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, right? These two, this conurbation area where you've got huge industrial potential there. So that is a problem to give that up to Russia. It's a zero-sum game, isn't it, where Ukraine loses, Russia gains. So it's a double whammy there. But then the big notion is that actually these places are covered in defenses. So if you just gave Russia all of that area there, then this is where all the Ukrainian defenses are. All these yellow lines are significant trench networks. And beyond this area of Donetsk up here, there are no defensive lines. You are giving away your strongest fortifications. And Kramatorsk and Slavyansk are thought of as fortress cities. They have these big Soviet era industrial facilities like Avastal and Mariupol that have these huge bunker systems that would be an absolute nightmare for the Russians to try and take. So French OSINT military analyst Clément Mollin has published an infographic map showing the fortified Ukrainian defensive positions in Donbas. According to him and a joint group of French military analysts, abandoning the non-occupied parts of Donetsk region without a fight would be madness, because the majority of Ukraine's fortified defenses and 5 key cities are still located there. Mollin and also presented a separate map illustrating what Ukraine's defense would look like if these territories were surrendered to Russia without resistance. The western operational zones would be completely exposed. There are almost no fortified positions there, meaning Russian forces would be able to advance rapidly into operational depths if Ukraine, was pressured into capitulation terms and the occupiers seized Donbas without combat. The idea is that Russia would be motivated to just keep going. Oh, you've given us this, wait 6 months, do a bit of rearming, reconstitution, and have another go. And then they have this area that can't be militarily taken back, because they would then be the defenders of these huge fortified networks. Ukraine would never be able to take that back militarily, and then Russia would just use that as a springboard to launch into Ukraine at large and move north, maybe bypass Izium, surround Izium, move up to Kharkiv, take all of the area to the other side of the Oskil River, and then go down the right bank of the Oskil River, to the east to the west of the Oskil River, and take all of that land, as well as moving in this direction towards Kyiv. So yeah, absolute insanity. Ukraine. So, however, such a scenario is ruled out. Ukraine's political and military leadership, along with European leaders, have unequivocally rejected fulfilling Putin's demands. But how much pressure will the United States put on Ukraine to give up this land? Ukraine does seem desperate to want to do a deal, actually, I think. I think there are indications that they really do actually want to do a deal now. This is precisely why Putin wants Donbas handed over without fighting, to later break a fake ceasefire agreement within months or a year and launch a rapid advance towards Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Ukrainian and Western military intelligence emphasize that at the current pace, Russia cannot capture the administrative borders of Donbas before August 2027. That's what NATO have just said. That's what many people are saying. I mean, clearly, they've struggled to take Pokrovsk in how long? Chasiv Yar is still partially under Ukrainian control, and they were supposed to have lost that bloody ages ago, right? And it just didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened. Was it supposed to be this summer? Was it last summer they were supposed to have lost the Chasiv Yar? Just absolutely incredible. So, these areas aren't easy for the Russians to take. They have lost, by all accounts, tremendous numbers of people in Pokrovsk, tremendous numbers of people. And Ukraine can use all of this land to be insanely attritional for the Russians. That if they did want to continue the war, if there were no peace negotiations, then this would be the end of the Russian army, I would have thought. Why would you want to give that away? So I can't see that the Donbas will be given to Ukraine, but it doesn't stop the Trump administration negotiators seeing this as an obvious token to pay Russia off with. And I just think it shows a massive lack of understanding from people like Witkoff and Kushner, who are just looking at this from a business point of view. And you got Marco Rubio reiterating Trump's point about the economics, talking about how Ukraine could be this incredibly prosperous nation. They've got all this potential, and it all just seems to be money, 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 grift, 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 without considering Ukraine, what they want, their sovereignty, a just outcome, a morally just outcome, and also the value, intrinsic and extrinsic, of this whole region. So yeah, I can't foresee Ukraine ever giving this up willingly, or as part of any negotiations. I do understand why they are saying this is a red line. And that might mean that there are no successful negotiations about to take place, because Russia definitely want this, and that's kind of their red line. We at least want the whole of the Donbas signed over to us. And Ukraine are like, that ain't ever going to happen. This is too valuable. And then, because Trump won't particularly understand that, won't take the time to listen to the rationale, he will probably use that as a stick to hit Ukraine with. Say, why aren't you giving this land up to Russia? They're the bigger guys. You don't have any cards. You should be giving up this land. You absolute idiot. So that, I think, would be the Trumpian position. And yeah, and Ukraine are just going to be hit either way. Anyway, that's my tuppence on the Donbas and why Ukraine shouldn't give it up. I mean, there's lots more to say about it, and we could go and look at the natural resources that are left in just the meager areas that are still under Ukrainian control. And, you know, we could look at its former glory, industrially speaking, but much of that would have been degraded already and lost as its, you know, frontline areas now that are being absolutely shellacked. Like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk is just getting hit lots at the moment. But anyway, I can't foresee Ukraine giving this area up, and nor should they. And I really wish that the US Trump administration would stop pressuring Ukraine in ways that are just inexcusable. Anyway, that's enough from me. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Then you can keep abreast of all the information concerning the war in Ukraine and beyond, as I do all sorts of geopolitical videos talking about pretty much everything. So thank you to those who already have. In the meantime, take care, and I'll speak to you soon.